Don't look outside. This will literally change how you think about your codes and will make you a way better programmer. Okay, let's just jump right into it. If we take a look at this basic function right here, can I confidently say that this function could survive in a code base for decades? The answer is yes. But the question is why? If we understand why this function could survive in a code base for decades, we could do the same with all of our functions, and so we can have a better software overall. Okay, and to understand why, we need to take a look at this function over here. Can I say the same about this function? Can I say that this function could survive for a decade in a code base? The answer is no. Why? Because of this global variable right here, the z. The z is a global variable. And so the add function right here now depends on something that exists outside of the function's scope. Okay, and so this is a problem. Why? Because this z variable is accessible anywhere outside the function, and so it's mutable, meaning that anyone could change its value, hence changing the functionality of our function. And here, the problem isn't only with the global variable, it's with any dependency that our function has, okay, and with anything that our function references that lives outside of the scope. Because with every single thing that we use and we mention inside our function that exists outside the function, we're making assumptions about the environment outside our function. However, if we take a look at this code right here, can I say that this code could survive for a decade in a code base? The answer is yes. Why? Because the function is self-contained. And one of the biggest benefits to this approach over this approach is that now I can take this function right here, the add function, isolate it, okay, and use this exact function anywhere else in my code base, or I can take the function to totally different project and it's gonna work. Why? Because it's self-contained and it doesn't mention anything outside of its scope. And that's the whole thing about don't look outside. Okay, don't look outside means that whenever you have more dependencies, okay, meaning more classes, more functions, more variables that you mention outside of your current scope, you're adding a dependency, and so you're increasing the likelihood of problems happening inside this scope. Okay, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use global variables or you shouldn't mention stuff outside of your function. Okay, sometimes we need to do this and this is a must, but I'm saying that dependencies in your code should be loosely coupled, not tightly coupled. Okay, and the thing is that if we take a look at like the major programming paradigms that people use nowadays, which are functional and OOP, they are both trying to do this. They are both trying to not look outside. Okay, if we take a look at OOP, for instance, it's all about encapsulation. Encapsulation is literally bundling data and behavior into a single unit so that we don't have any dependencies outside of the class. Okay, the same is also true in functional programming with pure functions and immutability. A pure function is by definition a function that is deterministic and a function that doesn't perform any side effects outside of its scope. And so that leads us to have immutable data structures, because if you have immutable data structure, it means that we're always dependent on this data structure that's not in our control. It's outside of our function, and so anyone could mutate it. And so if other piece of code depends on this same mutated variable or mutated data structure, we can have inconsistency because some piece of code depends on a version of this variable and other piece of code depends on another version of this variable. And so we will have inconsistency because we're not having the same exact data structure or variable over and over and over again. Okay, and so that's why we would have an immutable data structure. So we can expect the same behavior always from the same variable. So whenever you're writing a new line of code or a new module, new function, new class, always remember that you shouldn't look outside as much as you can.